The harsh fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport made Olivia Bennett's exhaustion even more unbearable. Her 1-year-old son, Lucas, squirmed in her arms, his chubby face flushed from crying for the past 15 minutes. The Discount Airlines check-in counter seemed miles away, with a line that snaked endlessly through the terminal. Olivia shifted her worn diaper bag higher on her shoulder and tried to ignore the judgmental glances from business people in pressed suits, who clearly wished the crying baby was anywhere else but here. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, gently bouncing Lucas while checking her phone. 6:15 a.m. Their flight to Boston departed at 7:30, and she still needed to get through security. The 28-year-old single mother fought back tears of frustration. This trip wasn't optional. Her mother was in the hospital after a sudden stroke, and Olivia needed to be there, despite having barely enough money for the last-minute tickets. Life hadn't always been this difficult. Just 18 months ago, Olivia had a stable teaching job, a husband, and dreams of a perfect family life. Then came pregnancy, and with it, Gregory's true colors. "I never signed up for this," he had said coldly one night, 6 months into her pregnancy. By morning, his closet was empty, his wedding ring left on the kitchen counter. No warning, no real explanation, just abandonment when she needed him most. Now she balanced Lucas on her hip while struggling with the check-in kiosk, her fingertips trembling against the screen. "Would you like some help?" A deep voice from behind startled her. Olivia turned to see an older woman in an airline uniform with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Dorothy. "Yes, please," Olivia sighed gratefully. "I've never flown with him before." Dorothy's experienced hands made quick work of the check-in process. "You're in seat 23A, window seat, not a full flight today, so with any luck, you might have some space." She lowered her voice and added, "I'll make a note for the gate staff about your situation. Sometimes they can work a little magic with seating." "Thank you," Olivia whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Small kindnesses felt magnified these days. By the time they reached the gate, Olivia's arms ached from carrying Lucas, the diaper bag, and her small carry-on. She hadn't been able to afford checking a bag. Her bank account held exactly $127.43 after purchasing these tickets, money that needed to last until her next paycheck from the diner where she now worked, having lost her teaching position during maternity leave due to budget cuts. As boarding began, Olivia found herself among the last group called. Trudging down the jetway, she made silent promises to Lucas that someday things would be better, that the constant worry about money, about food, about rent, would eventually fade. Right now, those promises felt hollow. Even to herself, she found 23A and collapsed into the window seat, arranging Lucas in her lap as he began fussing again. She fumbled in the diaper bag for his pacifier, acutely aware of nearby passengers' expressions, shifting from neutral to concerned when they spotted the baby. 10 minutes passed with no one claiming the middle seat beside her. Olivia allowed herself a flicker of hope that perhaps she might have extra space after all, but just as the flight attendants prepared to close the doors, hurried footsteps approached. "Sorry, excuse me," said a man's voice. Olivia looked up to see a tall figure in a charcoal suit gesturing to the middle seat. "I think that's me." Olivia nodded and shifted Lucas to make room. The man, mid-30s with dark hair and glasses, slid into place beside her, arranging his leather messenger bag under the seat with practiced efficiency. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne and coffee. Everything about him, from his polished shoes to his platinum watch, screamed success, making Olivia acutely conscious of her own worn jeans and the coffee stain on her sleeve she hadn't had time to wash out. "Daniel Harper," he said, offering a hand with a brief professional smile. "Olivia Bennett," she replied, awkwardly shifting Lucas to shake his hand. "And this is Lucas." Lucas chose that moment to let out a piercing wail. "I'm so sorry," Olivia said automatically, her face flushing. "He's usually better than this. It's been a long morning." "No apology needed," Daniel replied, though Olivia wasn't sure she believed him. Men like him, clearly wealthy, clearly important, rarely had patience for crying babies on early morning flights. The plane began taxiing as Olivia desperately tried to calm Lucas, who seemed determined to make his displeasure known to everyone. Fatigue crashed over her in waves. She hadn't slept properly in days, worrying about her mother, about money, about how she would manage everything alone. "Would you like me to hold him for a moment while you get settled?" Daniel asked unexpectedly. Surprise must have shown on Olivia's face, because he quickly added, I have nieces and nephews. I'm reasonably qualified. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia handed Lucas over. To her astonishment, the baby's cries immediately softened as he stared, fascinated, at Daniel's glasses. The businessman gently bounced Lucas on his knee, speaking in low, soothing tones about the airplane. Thank you, Olivia managed, taking the opportunity to organize the chaos of items that had spilled from her bag. It's been challenging traveling alone. Daniel nodded, saying nothing about the obvious state of her belongings, the second-hand clothes, the nearly empty wallet as she rummaged for Lucas's teething ring. There was no judgment in his eyes, just a focused attention on keeping the baby calm. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Lucas began to grow drowsy. Olivia took him back, cradling him against her chest as his eyelids grew heavy. Boston your final destination? Daniel asked quietly. Yes. My mother's in the hospital, Olivia replied, then wondered why she'd volunteered that information to a stranger. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you. Olivia hesitated, then added, It was unexpected. She had a stroke 3 days ago. Daniel nodded sympathetically. That's tough. I lost my father to a stroke 5 years ago. It's why I started the foundation. Foundation? The Harper Neurological Foundation, he explained. We fund research and treatment programs at hospitals across the Northeast. Olivia's eyes widened slightly. Of course, this man wasn't just any businessman. He was clearly someone important, someone whose name might appear in newspapers. That's wonderful, she said, feeling increasingly self-conscious about her circumstances. Lucas had finally fallen asleep against her chest, his warm weight, both comforting and exhausting. Olivia fought to keep her own eyes open, the sleepless nights catching up to her. You should rest too, Daniel said gently. I don't mind if you want to close your eyes for a bit. Under normal circumstances, Olivia would never consider sleeping with her baby on a flight beside a stranger, but exhaustion clouded her judgment, and something about Daniel's calm demeanor felt trustworthy. Besides, Lucas was finally peaceful, and she was so tired. Maybe just for a minute, she murmured, her eyelids already growing heavy. Take your time, she heard him say as consciousness began slipping away. You both deserve some rest. The last thing Olivia remembered was the gentle rhythm of the plane engines and the unexpected kindness of a stranger on what had started as one of the most difficult days of her already challenging life. For just a moment, the constant weight of worry lifted from her shoulders, allowing sleep to claim her completely. She didn't know how long she had been asleep when something caused her to stir. As consciousness slowly returned, Olivia realized with horror that Lucas was no longer in her arms. Panic surged through her body as her eyes flew open, only to freeze at the sight before her. Daniel Harper sat quietly beside her, holding Lucas securely in his arms. The baby was awake but calm, tiny fingers reaching curiously for Daniel's glasses, while the man whispered something that made Lucas's face break into a delighted smile. Neither had noticed she was awake yet. In that suspended moment, watching a kind stranger gently caring for her son, Olivia felt something shift inside her, a crack in the wall of isolation she had built around herself since Gregory's abandonment. For several seconds, Olivia remained perfectly still, absorbing the unexpected scene before her. In the harsh reality she'd grown accustomed to, strangers rarely offered kindness without expecting something in return. Yet here was this man, clearly wealthy, clearly busy with his own important life, gently entertaining her son with quiet patience. You're a natural, she said finally, her voice slightly hoarse from sleep. Daniel looked over, surprise flickering across his face before it settled into a small smile. He's a good kid, curious about everything. He adjusted Lucas in his arms. Hope you don't mind. He started stirring about 20 minutes ago, and I didn't want him to wake you. 20 minutes? Olivia straightened, embarrassment washing over her. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Please don't apologize, Daniel interrupted gently. You clearly needed the rest. Lucas spotted his mother and immediately reached for her, babbling excitedly. As she took him back, their hands briefly touched, and Olivia was struck by how steady Daniel's felt compared to her own trembling fingers. Thank you, she said, the words inadequate for the unexpected kindness. My pleasure. Daniel checked his watch. We've got about 40 minutes until landing. Can I get you anything? Water? The flight attendant came by earlier. Olivia shook her head, suddenly self-conscious about her rumpled appearance. She tried to smooth her hair with one hand, while balancing Lucas with the other. "How's your mother doing?" Daniel asked after a moment of silence, his tone conversational but gentle. The question caught Olivia off guard. Most people made polite small talk and moved on, not actually remembering details shared in passing. "The doctors say it's too early to know. She's stable, but—" Her voice faltered. "But you need to be there," Daniel finished for her. "I understand Massachusetts General Hospital has an excellent neurology department if that's where she is. Mercy Medical. It's all her insurance would cover." The admission felt painfully exposing, another reminder of the financial constraints that shaped every aspect of her life. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "They've made impressive improvements to their stroke unit recently. A colleague of mine consults there occasionally." The conversation shifted as Lucas became fussy again. Olivia dug through her bag, searching for a small container of Cheerios she'd packed. As she moved items around, the worn envelope containing her last pay stub fell out, along with a past due notice from her landlord that she'd been avoiding opening. Daniel politely averted his eyes, but not before he'd clearly seen both items. Heat rushed to Olivia's cheeks as she quickly stuffed them back into her bag. The gulf between their worlds felt suddenly vast and uncrossable. "So what takes you to Boston?" she asked, desperate to change the subject. "Board meeting for the foundation, followed by a conference on neurological research funding," he replied. Then, after a brief hesitation, "Actually, I'll be visiting several hospitals while I'm there, including Mercy Medical." "Oh," Olivia tried to keep her tone casual while feeding Lucas, who was happily grabbing at the Cheerios with his tiny fingers. "We're expanding our patient support programs. Medical care is only part of the equation. Transportation to appointments, childcare during treatments, even help with basic needs. Those gaps in support can determine whether someone recovers fully or not." Daniel spoke with unexpected passion, his professional demeanor warming as he explained. Olivia found herself nodding along, thinking of her own mother. "That's exactly what we're struggling with now. My mum lives alone and I have no idea how she'll manage once she's released. I can't afford to stay in Boston more than a few days, and she has no one else." The moment the words left her mouth, Olivia regretted them. She wasn't looking for charity, yet here she was, practically announcing her problems to this stranger. "That's precisely the kind of situation our program aims to address," Daniel said, showing no sign that he found her disclosure inappropriate. "Would you mind if I asked what neighborhood your mother lives in?" "Dorchester," Olivia replied, "near Fields Corner." "Perfect. That's actually one of our pilot neighborhoods." He reached for his bag and pulled out a business card. "Our local coordinator's contact information is on there. Her name is Melissa Chen. Tell her I suggested you call. The foundation might be able to help with your mother's situation." Olivia took the card, studying the embossed logo and Daniel's name with the title Executive Director beneath it. The coincidence seemed almost too perfect. "Why are you doing this?" she asked before she could stop herself. Daniel looked at her directly, his expression serious. 5 years ago, when my father had his stroke, we had every resource available. The best doctors, private nurses, rehabilitation specialists, and it still wasn't enough to save him." He paused. "But during that time I saw how many families around us were facing the same medical crisis without any of those resources. The difference in outcomes was—" He shook his head. "It wasn't just unfair. It was fixable." Something in his sincerity made Olivia's throat tighten. She'd grown so accustomed to fighting every battle alone that genuine help felt almost foreign, suspicious even. "I'm not sure what to say," she admitted, clutching the business card. "You don't have to say anything," Daniel replied simply. "Just call Melissa when you get settled." The overhead speaker announced they were beginning their descent into Boston. Olivia secured Lucas more firmly in her lap and prepared him for the pressure change, offering him a bottle. To her surprise, Daniel reached over and held the bottle for a moment while she adjusted her seatbelt, their fingers brushing again. "Do you have family in Boston?" he asked as the plane began its descent. "Anyone who can help with your mother or with Lucas while you're handling things?" Olivia shook her head. "Just me. I moved to Denver 3 years ago for a teaching position. My mother was my only family in Boston." "You're a teacher?" There was genuine interest in his voice. "I was," she corrected, the loss still stinging. "Elementary school, 3rd grade. I lost my position during budget cuts last year, right after Lucas was born." She didn't mention how her maternity leave had made her an easy target for downsizing, or how childcare costs had forced her to take the diner job instead of finding another teaching position. Daniel was quiet for a moment. That's the profession that shapes the future, yet we consistently undervalue it, he finally said, a hint of frustration in his tone. My foundation focuses on healthcare, but education? He trailed off, seeming lost in thought. The plane touched down with a slight bump, jolting Lucas, who let out a surprised cry. Olivia automatically began soothing him, her practiced movements the result of countless difficult moments handled alone. I have a car service waiting, Daniel said, as passengers began gathering their belongings. Can I offer you a ride to the hospital? It would be no trouble. Olivia hesitated, torn between practical need and ingrained caution. That's very kind, but it's on my way, he added. Truly. The sincerity in his eyes won out over her hesitation. That would be helpful, thank you. As they disembarked, Olivia noticed how Daniel naturally slowed his pace to match hers, even offering to carry her worn bag, while she managed Lucas. Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb, the driver stepping forward to take their bags. Ms. Bennett is joining us, James, Daniel explained. We'll be making a stop at Mercy Medical Center first. Of course, Mr. Harper, the driver replied without hesitation. Settled in the spacious back seat with a car seat that Daniel had somehow arranged for Lucas, Olivia felt acutely out of place. The leather seats were softer than her own bed, the interior immaculate. Lucas, however, seemed delighted by the new surroundings, his earlier fussiness forgotten. I hope this isn't strange to ask, Daniel said as they navigated through Boston traffic, but would you mind if I checked in on your mother's progress occasionally? Through you, of course, he added quickly. As I mentioned, we're expanding our programs, and understanding real patient experiences helps us improve our approach. The request seemed oddly personal, yet his tone remained professional. Olivia studied him, trying to understand his motivations. I suppose that would be all right, she said cautiously. Perfect. I'll give you my direct number. He took out another business card and wrote on the back before handing it to her. Feel free to call or text with updates, or if you need anything, he added more softly. Before Olivia could respond, Lucas let out a delighted squeal, reaching toward Daniel with grabby hands. Without hesitation, Daniel made a silly face in return, causing Lucas to dissolve into giggles. The sound of her son's laughter, rare in their often difficult life, struck Olivia deeply. She watched as this successful, important man willingly made himself ridiculous to entertain a baby he'd known for less than 2 hours. In that moment, something shifted again inside her. The wall she'd built after Gregory's betrayal, the one that protected her from hoping, from trusting, developed another small but significant crack. As they pulled up to the hospital entrance, Olivia gathered her courage. Would you like to come in just for a moment? The invitation surprised even herself. To meet my mother, I mean. She'd want to thank you for helping us. Daniel's expression softened with genuine warmth. I'd be honored, he said, in a way that made Olivia believe he truly meant it. And as they walked through the hospital doors together, Daniel carrying Lucas as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Olivia felt, for the first time in over a year, that perhaps she wasn't completely alone after all. The antiseptic smell of the hospital hit Olivia as they entered, bringing with it a wave of anxiety she'd been trying to suppress. Lucas sensed her tension, becoming fussy in Daniel's arms. Room 412, she told Daniel after checking the text message from her mother's neighbor, who had been keeping her updated. The elevator ride was silent, each floor bringing Olivia closer to a reality she wasn't sure she was prepared to face. When they reached her mother's room, Olivia hesitated outside the door. I haven't seen her since. I don't know what to expect. Daniel adjusted Lucas in his arms. Would you like a minute alone first? Olivia nodded gratefully. Would you mind waiting with Lucas? Just for a moment. Take all the time you need, Daniel assured her, bouncing Lucas gently as the baby began to fuss. Patricia Bennett looked smaller than Olivia remembered. Her usually vibrant presence diminished against the stark white hospital sheets. Machines beeped steadily beside her, monitoring vital signs. The right side of her mother's face drooped slightly, and when she turned toward the door, her eyes lit with recognition, though her smile was uneven. Livy, Patricia managed, her speech slurred but comprehensible. She reached out with her left hand, her right remaining motionless at her side. "Mom," Olivia whispered, rushing to her bedside. They embraced awkwardly around the monitoring equipment. "I came as soon as I could." "Lucas?" Patricia asked, her concern evident even through her impaired speech. "He's just outside. He's fine." Olivia squeezed her mother's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Been better." Patricia attempted a smile. "Doctor says, lucky. Caught early." A knock at the door interrupted them. Daniel stood in the doorway, Lucas babbling happily in his arms. "Sorry to interrupt." Someone was getting impatient to see his grandmother. Patricia's eyes widened with surprise, first at Lucas, then at the unfamiliar man holding him. "Mom, this is Daniel Harper. We met on the plane. He's been incredibly kind to help us get here." The explanation felt inadequate for the connection that had formed over the past few hours, but Olivia couldn't find better words. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Bennett," Daniel said warmly, bringing Lucas closer so Patricia could see him. Lucas immediately reached for his grandmother, recognizing her despite not having seen her for several months. Patricia's eyes filled with tears as she touched his cheek with her functioning hand. "He's grown," she managed. Olivia was about to explain Daniel's foundation when a doctor entered, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Bennett, I'm Dr. Lawson, your mother's neurologist." Daniel immediately straightened, a subtle shift in his demeanor. "Dr. Marcus Lawson, from the Georgetown Study on Early Intervention Protocols." The doctor looked surprised. "Yes, that's right. Daniel Harper, Harper Neurological Foundation. Your research on rehabilitation timing has been groundbreaking." Recognition dawned on Dr. Lawson's face. "Mr. Harper, of course, your foundation's grant has been instrumental in our outpatient program." Olivia watched this exchange with growing confusion, feeling like she'd stepped into an alternate reality, where the stranger she'd met hours ago on a plane was somehow connected to her mother's medical care. Dr. Lawson turned to Olivia. "We should discuss your mother's care plan. She's stabilized, but rehabilitation will be crucial over the next few weeks." The conversation that followed was overwhelming. Home care requirements, physical therapy sessions, medication schedules. Each item added to the mountain of responsibility Olivia would need to manage, on top of caring for Lucas and somehow maintaining her job in Denver. "I've already arranged to take next week off," Olivia explained, but after that, she trailed off, the impossibility of the situation hanging in the air. Daniel, who had been quietly standing with Lucas near the window, spoke up. "Dr. Lawson, is Mrs. Bennett a candidate for the Foundation's comprehensive care program?" Dr. Lawson considered this. "Given her condition and circumstances, absolutely, if there's an opening." "I believe we can make that arrangement," Daniel said confidently, then turned to Olivia. "The program provides coordinated home care, transportation to appointments, and support services. It's exactly what your mother needs, and it's fully funded by the Foundation." Olivia stared at him, speechless. It sounded too good to be true, exactly the solution she needed but couldn't possibly afford. "Why would you do this?" she asked once Dr. Lawson had left, her voice barely above a whisper. "You barely know us." Daniel handed Lucas back to her, his expression serious. "When my father was ill, someone told me there are no coincidences, just opportunities we're meant to find. Meeting you today, I think it was one of those opportunities." Patricia, who had been quietly observing from her bed, spoke up with effort. "Smart man," she said, giving Daniel an approving look that made Olivia blush. Later, after arrangements had been made and contact information exchanged with the program coordinator, Daniel reluctantly mentioned he needed to leave for his board meeting. "I understand," Olivia said, walking him to the elevator. Lucas had fallen asleep in a hospital-provided portable crib. "I don't know how to thank you for everything today." "No thanks necessary," Daniel insisted. "But I would like to check in on you both tomorrow, if that's all right. Maybe bring dinner to the hospital?" The offer caught Olivia off guard. This felt less like professional concern and more like something else entirely. "I'd like that," she admitted before she could second-guess herself. Daniel smiled, a genuine warmth lighting his features. "Until tomorrow, then." After he left, Olivia returned to her mother's room to find Patricia watching her with knowing eyes. "Nice man," she commented, her speech improving slightly with practice. "Mom, it's not like that," Olivia protested weakly. "He's just being kind." Patricia raised an eyebrow, a familiar gesture that Shoc hadn't erased. "Saw how he looked at you." Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord in Denver. "Received notice you'll be gone. Rent still due on first. No exceptions. Reality crashed back. The foundation would help with her mother, but her own precarious financial situation remained unchanged. She still needed to return to Denver, to her job at the diner that barely covered her expenses. The momentary relief faded, replaced by familiar anxiety. That evening, after settling her mother for the night and checking into the budget motel she'd reserved weeks ago, the only accommodation she could afford, Olivia scrolled through her meager bank balance on her phone. Even with the foundation's help for her mother, her own situation was dire. The airline had already confirmed no refunds were available for her return ticket, which couldn't be changed without a substantial fee. Lucas slept in a portable crib the motel had provided, his peaceful face a stark contrast to the storm of worry inside her. How could she leave her mother now? But how could she stay without losing everything in Denver? As she contemplated these impossible choices, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Just checking that you and Lucas got settled for the night," Daniel's text read. "Do you have everything you need?" Olivia stared at the message, torn between pride and desperation. Something about Daniel made her want to trust him, yet years of self-reliance made accepting help feel like failure. "We're fine, thank you," she replied, unable to bring herself to reveal the truth of their cramped motel room or her financial dilemma. The 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. "I hope this isn't overstepping, but the foundation keeps an apartment near the hospital for families of patients. It's currently unoccupied. You and Lucas would be welcome to use it during your stay." Olivia's finger hovered over the keyboard. The offer was tempting, too tempting, but accepting felt like crossing a line, acknowledging a need she'd spent months pretending didn't exist. Before she could respond, another message appeared. "No strings attached, Olivia. Just a safe, comfortable place for you and Lucas while you help your mother. The apartment would otherwise sit empty." In the silence of the motel room, with her sleeping son and mounting worries, Olivia made a decision that would unknowingly alter the course of her life. She typed a simple response: "Thank you. We accept." What she couldn't possibly know was that across town, in a luxury hotel suite, Daniel Harper smiled at his phone, feeling an unexpected sense of purpose, and something else he wasn't quite ready to name. 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, rehabilitation appointments, and sleepless nights with Lucas, who was teething and fussy in the unfamiliar surroundings. The foundation's apartment had proved to be a lifesaver, a spacious 2-bedroom unit within walking distance of the hospital, fully furnished with even a crib and baby supplies that Daniel had arranged. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, calculator in hand, trying to make impossible numbers work. Her savings were depleted, her rent in Denver was overdue, and her manager at the diner had texted yesterday that if she didn't return by Monday, they'd have to reconsider her position. Patricia was making remarkable progress. Dr. Lawson called it exceptional, but was nowhere near ready to live independently. The Foundation's program would continue supporting her medical care, but Olivia's dilemma remained unchanged: stay in Boston with no income, or return to Denver and leave her recovering mother. A knock at the door interrupted her calculations. Daniel stood there, Chinese takeout bags in hand. Over the past weeks, he'd become a regular presence, stopping by every few days with food, updates on her mother's care through the foundation, or simply to spend time with Lucas, who had grown inexplicably attached to him. "You look stressed," Daniel observed, setting down the food and taking a seat across from her scattered papers. "Just working through some logistics," Olivia replied vaguely, gathering the bills to hide them. Daniel nodded, not pressing further as he unpacked containers of food. Their friendship, if that's what it was, had developed an easy rhythm, though Olivia still found herself guarding certain vulnerabilities. "How's Lucas doing with the new teeth?" he asked, glancing toward the bedroom where the baby was napping. "Better today. He actually slept 4 hours straight last night." Olivia gratefully accepted the container Daniel handed her. These meals had become another lifeline. Without them, she'd have been surviving on vending machine snacks. They ate in comfortable silence until Daniel finally spoke. "Olivia, I need to talk to you about something." His tone was serious enough to make her put down her fork. "What is it? Is there a problem with Mom's program?" Immediate worry flooded her. "No, nothing like that," he assured her quickly. "Your mother's care is secured for as long as she needs it. This is about you and Lucas." Olivia tensed. Here it was, the moment when the other shoe would drop, when all the kindness would reveal an expected return. I've been offered a teaching position, Daniel said, surprising her completely. Not for me, for you. Olivia stared at him. What? Riverside Elementary has an opening for a third-grade teacher starting next month. The previous teacher is taking maternity leave and decided not to return. He slid a folder across the table. The school is 10 minutes from here. The foundation sponsors an on-site childcare program for staff, so Lucas would be right there with you. Olivia opened the folder with trembling hands, finding an official letter offering her an interview, along with details about the position and salary, significantly higher than what she'd earned in Denver. I don't understand, she whispered. How? The foundation partners with several schools in underfunded districts, Daniel explained. We provide supplemental resources in exchange for priority consideration of qualified candidates we recommend. Your teaching credentials are excellent, Olivia. I only made the introduction. You're being considered on your own merits. The opportunity was everything she needed, appearing like magic when she was at her most desperate, yet something held her back from immediate celebration. Why are you doing all this? She asked, the question that had lingered since that first day on the plane. The program for Mom, the apartment, and now a job. No one does this much for strangers without a reason. Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering his response. When my father died, I inherited everything. The family business, the foundation, more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. What I didn't inherit was his purpose. He built that business from nothing, knew what it meant to struggle and overcome. He met her eyes directly. These past weeks, watching you fight so hard for your mother, for Lucas, never complaining despite impossible circumstances, I've learned more about real strength from you than from anyone. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. The truth is, Olivia, helping you has given me something I've been missing. You haven't been taking advantage. You've been giving me purpose, and maybe something more. The last words hung between them, charged with meaning. Olivia felt her heart race. Daniel, Lucas's cry from the bedroom interrupted whatever she might have said. By the time she returned with the baby, the moment had passed, though something had shifted in the air between them. The following Monday, Olivia interviewed at Riverside Elementary and was offered the position on the spot. That evening, as she packed up her meager belongings from the Denver apartment over a video call with her old roommate, reality finally sank in. She was starting over, building a new life in Boston. 2 months later, Patricia moved into a ground-floor apartment in the same building as Olivia and Lucas, her recovery progressing well enough for semi-independent living. The Foundation's program continued providing daily assistance and transportation to therapy. Olivia's new classroom became a second home. Her students adored her, especially when she occasionally brought Lucas to class for special activities. The childcare center at the school meant she could visit him during lunch breaks, eliminating the constant worry that had plagued her in Denver. Throughout it all, Daniel remained present, though carefully respectful of boundaries. He attended Patricia's birthday dinner, helped assemble furniture for Olivia's new apartment, and somehow always appeared with exactly what they needed before Olivia even realized they needed it. One crisp autumn evening, almost 6 months after that fateful flight, Daniel invited Olivia to dinner. Just the two of us, he specified, a first in their relationship. The restaurant overlooked Boston Harbor, elegant without being intimidating. Olivia wore a simple black dress she'd purchased with her own money from her teacher's salary, a small detail that mattered immensely to her growing sense of independence. I have something to show you, Daniel said after they'd ordered. He pulled out his phone and showed her photos of a new foundation initiative, a scholarship program for single parents pursuing education careers. We're calling it the Bennett Program. Your mother helped design it. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. My mother? Daniel nodded. She's been volunteering at the foundation office 3 days a week. Turns out she has quite a talent for program development. Olivia laughed through her tears. She never mentioned it. She wanted it to be a surprise. Daniel hesitated, then reached across the table for her hand. Olivia, there's something else I need to say. Her heart quickened at his serious tone. These past months, watching you rebuild your life, seeing your strength and determination, I've fallen in love with you. The words were simple, direct. I've tried to keep an appropriate distance because I never wanted you to feel obligated or indebted. Your independence matters to me as much as it matters to you. Olivia sat perfectly still, emotions washing over her. I don't expect anything, Daniel continued. If friendship is all you want, that's what we'll have. I just needed you to know the truth." Olivia thought of that first day on the plane, waking to find this man holding her baby with such gentle care. She thought of all the moments since, his patience, his respect for her pride, his genuine love for Lucas. "When Gregory left," she said slowly, "I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again. I've been so focused on proving I could do everything alone." She squeezed his hand. "But I'm realizing there's a difference between needing someone because you can't survive alone and wanting someone because life is better with them in it." Daniel's eyes filled with hope as she continued. "I love you too," she said simply. "Not because of what you've done for us, but because of who you are." Later that evening, as they walked along the harbor, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Is he finally telling you he's in love with you? Because if not, I'm going to do it for him." Laughing, she showed Daniel the message. "Your mother is a very perceptive woman," he said, pulling her close. "She is," Olivia agreed. "She also says life brings us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it, even when it arrives in the seat next to us on a plane." As Daniel kissed her under the Boston stars, Olivia thought of the exhausted, desperate woman she'd been 6 months ago. The journey hadn't been easy, but for the first time since Lucas was born, the future held more promise than fear. And that was the greatest gift of all.